Welcome to this episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm Paula Eddie Wilcox, and I'm delighted to welcome our guest for the second time, where we're looking at their take on the game and leadership aspect of the podcast. Who knows what we might find out, because we all look at this differently, and it's always so interesting to see what the guests have in store for me when I turn up, because we never plan this in advance. So I hope you're as excited as me. Let's get into it, and I'll see you on the other side. Welcome to this episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I'm delighted to be joined again by Dr Shirley Blenkinsop. Welcome back.
Thank you.
We obviously didn't scare you off in the week in between, so that's good news. And I'm super excited, Shirley, to be talking about the whole concept of game and leadership together. And I have to say, it's produced some really interesting reactions guests to date, from the sort of more, should I say, it's not about positive and negative, but the more sort of negative connotation, if you like, of the unpleasant political games people can play in the world of leadership, to the more positive sort of slant on it, where it's super high performing teams that people have been part of, or to the games, literally games they've played with their teams. We've had all sorts, but no two stories have ever been the same. So I'm pretty sure that your take on this is going to be quite different, and bringing your own wonderful, unique slant to it. So without further ado, Shirley, what is your take on game and leadership?
Oh, it's a really huge question. And as you say, there are so many different slants that you could take. A great friend of mine has written a book a few years ago called Games People Play. And I think that's Dr. Yves de Lunas. And I think what's interesting is that people do play all sorts of games for positive reasons and not so positive ones. When I think about games and leadership, I think of the importance for me of being truly passionate about something and really enjoying what you're doing and having fun. I mean, I have, very, very clear value set around, respect and trust and teamwork and excellence and so on. But one of those values is always fun. If I'm having fun, my performance is going to be much, much, much higher. So having fun and playing games, I mean, we all have an ego, a complex ego, and part of the ego is the child, and the child part of that ego is the playful child. So I really resonate with my playful child. If I'm having fun, and then things are going to go really well, I'm going to learn faster, I'm going to do better, I'm going to get much more engaged, I'm going to be able to commit and also deliver more. So for me, leadership, it's about, having fun, playing a positive game of some description, and working in a team is, in that sense, has a game element to it. So I work a lot with top teams. I'm often brought in as a consultant and coach because they're stuck in storming. So they're playing the game, but actually they're playing against each other rather than with each other. So I think part of this, as you said, the sort of negative element of game of leadership is when we're playing at cross purposes and we're not really working together to achieve something. And I think game of leadership, the leading together is a very important element of leadership. So, teamwork, most people recognize that being a leader, we can't achieve things on our own anymore. We need other people in order to achieve anything. And as such, being a leader means basically being a team leader, somebody who's able to really draw out those synergies and bring very diverse people together with different backgrounds and different capabilities, and learn how to enable them to work well together, like you would any football team. And as I say, I'm often brought in as a coach and a consultant to help teams get out of the storming mode where they're competitive, they're working across purposes, they're not collaborating, and they're stuck in that state. and as such, their performance is low, the results are poor, and so on. So thinking about what that means, most of the work I do through play. I personally learn best by doing stuff, and I personally learn best by playing games. So if I want to learn, I can't sit and read books forever, or I can't just listen to stuff or lectures or and so on. I just can't take in and really learn something unless I try to do something with the information I've been given. So when I'm working with my clients, it's always about lots of little exercises and games and stuff that we play just to see what happens and see what comes out of it, to spark new sort of paths of inquiry. Again, we talked last time about being curious about yourself and others. I think your journey of leadership begins with yourself, definitely, and being curious about yourself and how you respond to certain things. So by playing games, I think often we see where we hit, I guess, obstacles, things where we can't move forward. And I think through play, you know, often we anticipate that something's going to be super easy. And when we try and do it, we play the game and we fail, or we're not able to do something, then we realize there's some blockage in some instance, or definitely in teamwork, that we are not actually working together, we're working at cross purposes. And I think through play, even with very senior people, I think it's not a question of who you are or where you sit in the organizational structure or hierarchy. It's really about, you know, engaging the mind, having fun, but learning by doing, and learning by making mistakes. And those things all come together when we play games. So I would say most people who know me and have worked with me would say, oh, we do all sorts of interactive stuff and it's a lot of fun. And yeah, somehow we learn a lot as well at the same time. And I think, I think that's really my hallmark, which is I don't give lectures. If there's any theory, it's normally 2 minutes of theory with lots of potential links for anybody who wants to deep dive into the theory. Make sure that I'm not talking complete nonsense and that there is something credible behind. But it's really about, let's play the game, see what happens, and let's see what we can learn from playing the game. So I would say playing games, and games people play. Some people play very dirty games. I mean, I have worked in many industries, at many levels, including at very senior levels. There are an awful lot of narcissists out there who are playing very dirty games and are, manipulating situations and, for their own ends. There are also some amazingly genuine people out there from whom we can learn and grow together. So I guess that's my take on game of leadership. Very, very diverse, but playing games has been essential in my leadership journey, and certainly it's essential in the work that I do with others.
Oh, this is totally resonating with me, just because I know we're two different people from two very different worlds, if you like, and backgrounds, Shirley. But, I always say that if I'm not having fun while I'm working, then I need to change what I'm doing, because we spend so much time at work, and it's such a shame if you're sort of forcing yourself to be there, you're not enjoying it, things aren't going well, you're not sharing humor with your team. And of course it's appropriate humor and so on in the world that we live in, but it's just something that's very close to my heart, in making sure that we are having a good time whilst working towards the same goals, sharing the same purpose in what we're doing, whatever that might be. So to hear you talking about that is just making me smile a lot. And I hope that will resonate massively with our listeners. And, the other piece, yes, we talked about that, getting curious about yourself and others. But I love that expression you use, opening up new paths of inquiry. I think that's what you said. It's so interesting how we think we're really good sometimes. And I'm guilty of this myself. I think I'm really good at, thinking of some ideas and what have you. But then I always have that moment where I say, you know what, 2, 3 heads are better than my just one. And being able to bounce ideas from off of each other, if that's what the expression we use, and you know, somebody says something, then it sparks an idea in somebody else, and that then sparks the next step of that idea in somebody else. You know, it's incredible when that starts happening. And as you say, opening up those different paths of inquiry that, had we just been there on our own with our little thinkers on, we would never have come up with. So you may not be able to pull this one out of the bag, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What's one of the most amazing ideas that somebody's come up with that you just didn't expect in the moment, that surprised you?
Oh gosh, that is difficult off the cuff, because there's been so many things where, I mean, there were so many that last night, for example, I'm writing a book at the moment, and I have a couple of friends that I'm writing this book with. And one of them's in the US, so it's very late nights here in Germany. I'm based in Frankfurt, and my other friend is based in Vienna. So
You've got this, Shirley.
Yeah. So we were working on the book late last night, and there was something that I really hadn't understood, and I was sort of talking about it. And I didn't understand the significance of it at all. But as I was talking, my friend in Vienna said, that represents self-worth. And the minute she said it, I thought, wow, that is just light bulb moment. You know, I was struggling in my own head to try and think, I don't know why this has been so significant to me. And I was really struggling with it. And she said, yeah, it's about self-worth. And that represented for you self-worth. And that's why you held on to it so strongly all through your life in that sense. And I was talking about some difficult situations. And that's it, light bulb moment. Really, it was, in German, they say the aha effect, you know, you go, you know, that sort of moment of eureka. It suddenly everything fell in place. And it was like, wow, thank you. You know, I could spend months thinking about this, and in 2 seconds you've solved it for me. And I think sometimes other people see the patterns, they see things you don't see. You know, we've all got our take on the world, we've all got our vision, we've all got our personalities, we're processing the world with one brain. So we have our way of, you know, what data we're even looking at, what are we thinking about. It's only a subset of all the billions of things that are going on around us. And we're processing it in one way. And there are many different ways to process data. So ultimately, it's very, very limited. And the minute we open up and we engage with others in a collaborative way, trusting and valuing. I mean, I think for me, it's a 4-step process. First, we've got to recognize that other people are different, and that's really good that they're different. So diversity is essential.
Absolutely.
Once we've recognized that they're different, we've also got to respect that difference. So it's not good or bad, or, you know, we don't want to outvote people, ostracize them because they're different. We need to respect that they're different. And once we've respected it, we can then value it, which is the third stage, which is there's real value in difference. We might not like that people don't agree with us. We might not like that people have a different viewpoint, but there's a huge value in that diversity. So we need to learn how to value it. And once we valued it, we can leverage it. So we can't actually get the benefit of the diversity until we go through this recognition, respecting, valuing, and then leveraging. And that's, again, all based on trust and the ability to have conversations and communication, open communication, which is respectful, to share those differences. And so many people are in situations where, you know, that basis just isn't in place, so they can't bring, you know, their contribution to the table. And we lose so much from, you know, from having very sort of, you know, closed views of the world, or the inability to hear differences of opinion, or to, as I say, respect and value those. So, that would be my take on it, really.
Yeah, no, I love that, and I love that you had such a light bulb moment last night. How wonderful, because it takes someone else to just come in with a different view, and they will see something immediately that we've, as you say, you could have months thinking about it and maybe not got to the same conclusion, who knows. But the fact that we have these other people that come in and help support us in such a wonderful way, sharing that thought partnership, I like to call it, you know, is really helpful. And I think, you know, a lot of leaders struggle because they've not surrounded themselves with the right support either. And I think it might have been our first episode together, Shirley, said, you know, that coaching and mentorship throughout leadership is key to growth and development. I couldn't agree more. And I think there's still a lot of resistance to coaching, you know, in the leadership world. And as we know, the first budget to go is always the learning and development budget. And we, you know, as coaches, we kind of fall under that. And it's such a shame, because it's, in the end, it's short-sighted, because if they keep the learning and development budget going and keep supporting their teams, their employees, they'll stay engaged, they'll grow within the company and help grow the company, you know, for the better. So it's so interesting to me, especially, you know, having been through the global pandemic and seeing how that affected all of learning and development budgets during that time, when people really needed it the most, I would have argued.
Yeah, I guess we're beginning to see some of the really long-term issues post-COVID, not just from health issues, but mental health. I think we're seeing, you know, the absolute devastation that COVID, lockdown, and so on has caused in the mental health space. So, yeah, I think we need to watch that one for probably the next 20 years as that pans out. But yeah, not to get us off topic, I think in terms of leadership, that we've got a choice. I mean, often people think coaching is because things aren't going well, so you need someone to coach you to. And in reality, I mean, you can have a coach because you feel things aren't going well. I think in reality, you know, even if you're on a growth trajectory, let's say, looks a bit like this curve, and you get a coach, if that person is able to sort of open up the scope of your horizon, so you're not, this is your view on the world, we've all got our lenses, haven't we? Just to open that a bit, then suddenly we've got so much more that's going on that we're, you know, aware of. So, you know, this sort of curve will become this sort of curve, much steeper. And if we're doing that on a continuous basis with someone we really trust, who is helping us to see us for our warts and all. So it's not just what am I great at, and you know, just sort of basically giving us positive affirmation, but really helping us to understand how we can develop our well, I hate the word weakness. I always use development opportunities. I call them the do's, D-O, development opportunity, things that we need to work on. And we've all got our blind spots. And the minute we get those blind spots on the radar screen, they're not blind spots anymore. We can work on them. And those moments are the really big moments of, oh my goodness, I didn't even realize that was there. And there it is. And now I've got to do something about it. And I'm going to save that one for episode 3, because I think that's really important. Probably, one of my biggest takeaways in my whole leadership journey. But I think, you know, getting on a steeper learning curve, when you think how much added value that's going to bring if you're on this curve as opposed to a really steep curve. And some of the, I work in the startup space. I do a lot of work in Berlin with founders and entrepreneurs in artificial intelligence, which is obviously a big area, growing area. Some very, very intelligent, very ambitious and incredibly determined high performers and high potentials who are, you know, trying to disrupt the world and make it a better place for everyone. You know, they need to be on almost vertical learning curves. And you can only get on that sort of curve if the person that you're working with is trusted, that you know they always have your best interests at heart. It's never about them. It's always about you. And, you know, that basically that is a completely psychological safety there to exchange anything about anything to help you be the best possible version of yourself and stay on that steep learning curve. And that's the job of the coach, in my opinion, which is how can you increase the steepness of the learning curve so that that person can really much more quickly become a much more effective leader. And there's a huge worth in that. You don't pay them any more salary for being 5 times more effective, but it's worth so much more if they are more effective. But often, it's not viewed in that way. And coaching has a very mixed audience. Unfortunately, there's a lot of coaches out there that don't add a lot of value. I also have to say that this industry is everything from worst case to best case and everything in between. So not everybody who's out there working as a coach is necessarily adding as much value as they could be, which I think is a shame. But I would say definitely that having a coach, someone you really trust, who gets you on a steep learning curve and keeps you there and does it with your best interests at heart, is absolutely hugely valuable.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think what you shared there about coaching, the fact that it's an unregulated profession makes it very difficult to measure whatever the level of coaching quality across coaches. And for those of us that have a lot of time and effort into making sure we're adding value in the coaching space and serving those clients to be the best leaders they can be, it is difficult when we see the lack of value add in other areas. And I think we've got good work to do, Shirley, to help keep banging the drum, if you like, of where there is great leadership, great coaching, great development, potential reaching going on in terms of the work that we do, the trust that we give, the psychological safety space that we create, and that we help others to create that within their teams. It is, it's going to be a lifelong work, I think, in a good way.
Yeah. Well, I think in reality, we're all coaching. And going back to what I said in the first episode, parents are often in this role. I mean, as a parent, our leadership, and we are in a leadership role, basically. And it's a journey in its own right, also changes with time. And coaching becomes a really important part of that, during the teenage years and the later years as our children sort of grow and go. And, coaching is it's not about telling, it's about asking. It's not about talking, it's about listening and really hearing. So I think there's an awful lot of skills in there that everyone could really benefit from. Certainly many leaders, thinking about themselves as coaches. I think that's also part of the leadership role is to coach others, to enable them to get on steep learning curves. And it's all about growth and growing the people that work for you. So I think, the role of coach is a very diverse role that has many faces. And most of us, whether we realize it or not, are actually in a coaching role of some description.
Yeah, I think that's very, very fair to say. And, we are seeing more organizations waking up to that in terms of helping their leaders to become coaches as well, because they do play such a pivotal role in that leadership space within that organization. So yes, there's a long way for organizations to go, but there are some great green shoots that I'm seeing, in the experiences that I'm having, where they are saying, we really want coaching to be part of our culture, for a positive. It's not just about bringing in a few coaches that can help. This is fundamentally changing, going back to the behaviors we were talking about, of people within that organization, top down, got to be right throughout all levels, if you want to think of it hierarchically. And it's fascinating to be a part of that and see what a difference that's making. And you talked about, 20 years seeing the some of the devastating effects play out from the pandemic, we will see a significant change in the coaching space, I think, in the next 20 years as well, which is going to be really exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. And possibly means that certain coaches, or maybe all of us, need to understand as well, where our role starts, where it ends, and when it gets obviously outside of a area of competence, and that we then hand over to, psychotherapists, psychiatry, psychology, and so on. Because, definitely during COVID, a lot of people are alone. Some of us, we're sitting here chatting, and you were saying, I think, in the last episode, about how much you learn from interacting with others. That sort of creativity of brainstorming and idea generation and so on in a group. But obviously the pandemic was, a lot of people were isolated, and you didn't have that sort of engagement with others that they need in order to keep their energy high, to keep their motivation high, and so on. We all have different personalities, and we all have needs. So some of those needs got met and some of them didn't in COVID. And I think, the lasting impact will be, way beyond our lifetime, in terms of, how people are now behaving as a result of that. And fear, we talked about fear as well in the first episode. For me, the biggest things that I need to deal with in coaching, but equally often in a team development situation, is fears. We said outside outside the comfort zone, straight into the fear zone before you have any chance of any growth zone. And those fears often are also defense shields. People throw out defenses when they feel they're being attacked. And often, really sort of decoupling that and pulling that apart and establishing yourself as the coach. You're there to help, only to help. You're there for them, only for them. You're not coming with your own agenda, particularly if you're an external to an organization. There is no agenda. The agenda is, the coachee sets the agenda. And I think that creates a very safe space. But as you say, transitioning coaching and coaching into a learning culture. And, ideally, organizations are moving to create cultures in which, growth and development are fundamental parts of what everybody does, not just the HR department or some external coaches who are brought in every now and again for 2 or 3 sessions, because it's a continuous journey. So I guess that needs to be much more embedded in the overall management and leadership capabilities and competencies. But I think we're definitely on the same page there. But let's see how this all pans out with time. As you said, we had COVID. We had a couple of years there where most of those budgets were completely slashed, and a lot of people were left on their own to cope with a lot of change, newness, a lot of fear, and so on. And I think that has created a lot of devastation.
Yeah. Oh, goodness me. We've weaved a fascinating conversation here today, right from starting out in terms of games, your take on game and leadership, the fun aspect, of course, which we both share very much, right to talking about lasting effects of the pandemic and changes in culture, which we hope to see much, much more of in organisations moving forwards. Thank you for sharing your insights and thoughts and experience with us today. It's been fascinating once again, and delighted and excited that we have you for one more episode next week. Thank you very much for today, and we'll see you next time.
Great. Thanks very much, Paula, and see you in a week's time.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I always think the game episode is one of my favourites because we get a real insight to our guests' take on their ideas of how games and leadership fit together. Every one of them is different, and just when I think there isn't another take that we haven't thought of or covered, one of our guests comes up with something totally different and unique. It's really exciting. Look, now it's your turn. See what you think, see what resonated with you most, and as always, I encourage you to reflect on what you've heard and see what that might mean for your leadership moving forwards. I'm Paula Eddie Wilcox, and this is Game of Leadership, the podcast for curious leaders. I really look forward to seeing you all next week. Bye for now.